Anthony Fantano gave Sexy Red an 8 out of 10, and the internet melted down like the chain Drake bought from Pharrell. Sexy Red is a controversial artist. Some people hate her because they don't think she's a good rapper. Some people love her because she takes the energy of an artist like Chief Keef and combines it with a southern swagger that has a lineage back to artists like Crime Mob. I'm one of those people, by the way. I don't know how you can listen to a song like Perfect Match and not think that she's floating on that beat exactly how she should. Some people hate her because they think she's setting a bad example, but others point out that the same people don't complain when male artists rap about the same stuff. But this video is really not about Sexy Red. She's surely not the first artist to have the internet in an uproar based on what a reviewer thought of them. When it comes to modern music, there are many places that you can get a professional opinion on your favorite or your least favorite music. But the two places that people really seem to care the most about, at least across all genres, are Pitchfork and the needle dropper, Anthony Fantano. There are some other review platforms that I want to shout out real quick, like Dead End Hip Hop, who I personally love a lot for rap reviews. And then some that don't explicitly do review content, but also do great music content and kind of touch on reviewing things sometimes, like Hive Mind and NFR Podcast. For the sake of this video, we're going to be talking a lot about Pitchfork and Fantano, so prepare yourself. One thing I want to point out is that I'm not here to discuss whether their opinions matter. That's not what this video is about, and I feel like a lot of people have already covered that. I also don't know if I'm really the authority to decide who gets to talk about which genre or whatever, right? That's not me. Some people might have that, it's not me. What I'm looking to answer is, why do fans get mad at these reviews? You know what I personally get mad at? People who watch all my videos but don't check if they're subscribed. Really though, it does help so much when you guys like and comment, and the last two videos I've dropped have done the best so far of my channel, and it makes me really excited to keep going, so I really appreciate you guys. A big reason for people caring so much about Pitchfork and Fantano is that they both have a scale out of 10 that they use to grade their music. Their scales vary a bit, as Pitchfork uses a decimal system, and Fantano uses light or strong to shift the album in either direction. But in general, they rate the project out of 10. And just like how many people on the internet don't read articles, they just read headlines, a lot of people who engage in discourse on music reviews are not reading the review or watching the review. In the case of Fantano, they're literally just checking the score and saying, I agree or I don't agree. This is not the greatest strategy because on Pitchfork, you can read a review and think, oh, that was kind of positive, and then check the score and see that it's a 6.2. In fact, I found two reviews that had a similar tone, but were an entire point apart on the Pitchfork scale. The recent Snow Strippers tape, Night Killers Volume 1, got a 6.0, and the writer Kieran Press Reynolds' main point was that these songs are really fun, but after a certain point, they don't really have that much to say. Now, if we look at Brent Faiyaz's most recent project, Larger Than Life, which I'm a fan of, by the way, it got a 7.0, and the writer Alphonse Pierre's main point was that even though the music is good and fun, it could be taken to another level if Brent reached back a little further in his lyricism. These points aren't really that different, but if you're a score checker and not an article reader, then you'd come away with just that numerical value and be like, wow, Pitchfork said Brent's album is way better than the Snow Strippers album. I don't know why you would be comparing those two like head on like that, but honestly, nothing surprises me on the internet anymore. My point is, you're missing so much context just looking at the numbers. If you're a sports fan, then a good example might be what we call a box score watcher. I'll try to keep this as simple as possible for the non-sports fans in the room. Some people don't really watch basketball. They just check the box score and go, oh, looks like so-and-so had a good game or a bad game, just by looking at how many points they scored. But a lot of things you do on the basketball court don't go into the stat sheet. For example, like saving the ball from going out of bounds or playing really good defense. And even the points themselves sometimes, like hitting a three-pointer when you're down by 30 points with 10 seconds left, that looks the exact same in the box score as hitting a game-winning three-pointer. The same issue comes up in Fantano's content, and we can take a look at one of his tweets from this year to see what I mean. He asked what album people thought he was a little too harsh on, and the artist Quadeca, whose music is great by the way, replied with Bragance' Hypochondriac, which Fantano gave a 5. One of the most popular replies to Quadeca's tweet was one saying that they didn't actually really disagree with what Fantano said about the album. They just thought the score was too low. This is what happens when you actually watch or read a review. You might say, hey, I don't really agree with this score, but some of the points this person made are valid. What do these numbers even mean? It's impossible to maintain a scale for scoring albums that can be truly consistent. First of all, think about how wide the range of genres that we're comparing things are, right? Like Pitchfork will review a jazz album and then review a rap album and then review like a rock album and then go back and review some album from the 70s, and all of those are on the same scale. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to compare those things numerically, but if someone's being lazy and just looking at numbers, they might try to make an argument based on that. Or they might get angry at the score that they see. Accurately rating something out of 10 requires a really rigid rubric. I know this because I used to be a high school teacher, And I used to have to grade like 100 assignments a week from like kids. And it's like, if I didn't have a really obvious rubric for like how you get this point, how you get that point, like it was really impossible to not be super subjective about grading. It's the same with reviews. Like, what exactly is the rubric for grading something out of 10? That's how My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy can end up with a 6 and Sexy Red's album can end up with an 8. How are we even comparing these things? They're not remotely trying to do the same thing. And in Fantano's case, he's just one guy. He's gonna have one opinion on things, right? Like, there are albums that people think are classics that I listen to and I'm like, I don't really get it. And then there's stuff that I love that gets panned by Pitchfork, you know, and that's okay. And in Pitchfork's case, it's not even the reviewers themselves who pick the score. Everybody, like including the editor board and some of the other writers, they have to agree on a score. So it's not just the person assigning it. So when you see someone flaming the writer, like tagging them on Twitter, like, why did you give Taylor Swift a 7.7? Like, they might not have even been the one to pick that score. So obviously a lot of the outrage that comes from people about these reviews is coming from people who didn't actually read or watch it. But even within that outrage, we can divide it into two different groups. People who are mad that an artist they think kind of sucks got a high score, like the Sexy Red case that we talked about, or when Fantano gave Lil Pump a 7 or whatever. Or the opposite, which I think is a little more understandable, which is when people get mad that an artist they really like got a bad review. And this is gonna kind of sound like a hot take, but is a bad review always a bad thing for an artist? Some people might expect that a middling or a bad review would make somebody like cool off on an artist. But as a listener, has that ever happened to you? Because I don't think that's ever happened to me. In fact, I think if an album is actually good and then it gets panned in a review, it can have the opposite effect. It entrenches those listeners as fans. And they're like, hey man, no, I disagree strongly. And then all before they know it, they're on social media defending their favorite artist. So there are two Fantano albums that come to mind for me. The first is Gold Links and After That We Didn't Talk, which came out in 2015 and Fantano gave it a 2 out of 10. This was the beginning of Gold Link's career. If you go into the comments, it's hard to find a single person who agrees with Fantano. And it's not just in retrospect. You can sort by old comments and see the same thing. Fantano said that his singing sucked and his voice was annoying. And pretty much everyone in the comments was like, nah, we like it. I like this album a lot too, so I remember being like, what the hell is he talking about? And Gold Link followed that album up with At What Cost, which had the biggest hit of his career so far with Crew. As far as I can tell, he was independent before At What Cost, and then he signed to RCA for that album, which means that even after this panning by Fantano, it's not like the industry turned off from him. If anything, he went and got a big record deal after it. And you might even be able to argue that the attention you get from a bad review coupled with a good album that surprises people when they click on it, will actually lead more people to check out your album. I think that there's a little bit of a bell curve with reviews, right? Like, a really bad review or a really good review will pique someone's interest. They might be like, all right, let me see how bad this is. Or they might be like, wow, this is really amazing. I need to go check it out, according to this guy, right? But if it gets like a 5 or a 6, people are just kind of like, whatever, right? Maybe it's not for me. But something about getting the attention of the bad review coupled with actually like good music might actually just lead to more listeners, because people are like, whoa, you said this sucked, this doesn't suck. And when it comes to one guy like Fantano or even just an outlet like Pitchfork, people want to prove them wrong all the time. So if people are like, oh, I can't believe you gave blah 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 blank, and you get to be that blah blah blah, and people go in and listen to your album after, you might actually gain fans that way. And if anything hurt Gold Link's career, it definitely wasn't this review. It was probably that weird Mac Miller post.
Hey nigga, fuck Gold Link. Next nigga to say something crazy about Mac Miller, I'm fucking beating they ass.
So a more recent example for me is Paris, Texas's Mid-Air. It came out this year and Fantano gave it a 3 out of 10, which I was pretty surprised by. Just like the Gold Link album, everybody in the comments was like, what the hell, man? Now, it's a little too early to do a full analysis of how Paris, Texas's career is going since they dropped this. It was literally this year. But it certainly has not slowed them down in 2023. They sold out their show at Songbird Music House in DC, which is a 250 cap venue. Killing it. According to Reddit, they sold out their 500 cap show at the Roxy in LA. And I saw someone on the same Reddit saying that they had to buy tickets on resale for the Chicago show, which means they sold that one out too. And I was trying to find evidence that the Brooklyn show sold out because I wasn't 100% sure. But either way, the crowd looks crazy in this video, so I think that's a W. And they played at Camp Flog Gnaw, and they're about to go tour in Australia. Things are going pretty well. What I find really interesting about this example is even when the Fantano review came out, the band went on their IG story and posted this: yo, don't jump on the Anthony hate train. We're still a fan of bro, lol. This is secretly the best thing that could happen. I'll explain later. Why would a bad review be the best thing ever for a new independent group like Paris, Texas? The fact that everyone disagrees with this review and is in the the trenches arguing for them helps those fans become super fans. Because they're like, no, Fantano, I like this. You can't tell me not to like this. In fact, not only do I like it, now I love it. Now I'm going to their show. Now I'm going to stream the album again. I'm going to send it to a friend. I'm going to buy their merch. They're not just seeing them on a Spotify playlist and thinking, oh yeah, I kind of like them, whatever, right? And then maybe like wandering into their set if they're at a festival. Like, nah, this is how soldiers are created, bro. Like, people will go to war for you if you get a bad review and they like you. Like, this is how the Beehive is built. This is how the Rihanna Navy is built. Like, stuff like this. And it's not just a Fantano thing. For a Pitchfork example, they killed Childish Gambino's Camp in 2011. They gave it a 1.6, which like he's even like rapped about. Obviously, that didn't do much to slow down his career. We don't even really have to talk about that. Like, if you got a 1.6 from Pitchfork and you're where he is now, like, that should show you that these reviews don't really stop anything from happening. Also, Mac Miller, rest in peace, panned by Pitchfork with his debut album. Didn't slow him down either. In all of these cases, artists saw immense success after a bad review. And I'm sure that not all cases are like this. I'm not trying to say that everyone who gets a bad review on Pitchfork or Fantano, like, is gonna have a super successful career after. Like, obviously no. Like, there's gonna be a strong correlation between like someone getting panned and someone's career not panning out. No, you know, I didn't mean to like get all rappery with that, but like, it's just like, obviously, like, these guys are professional music critics, so like a lot of what they say sucks, like, might suck to a lot of people. But when they get something wrong like this, that attention might actually help the artist. So as a former math teacher, just to review, check your understanding type shit, right? Like, it's a bell curve. Bad review, good review. People will probably check both of those out of morbid curiosity, right? Middle, maybe if it's my kind of genre. If not, you know, those two types of reviews will get you clicks. Now, if the album is actually good and you got a bad review, you might have made a fan. If the album is good and you got a good review, you made a fan. Either way, it works. So there's a third group of fans who might argue that music reviewing is pointless and ask, why do we care about reviews at all? Now, if you ask me, the beauty of music journalism comes from the writing, not from the score. And when we focus on that, we can actually gain some really nice insight about music that we love, or just music in general. One of my favorite Pitchfork reviews is a retrospective looking at The Dream's Love Hate, which came out in 2007, but they didn't review it back then. They looked at it again in 2018. It was one of my favorite albums in middle school, but it's not like I was reading music reviews back then anyway. Looking back at it, I learned so much about the context of the music industry at the time that The Dream made that. I didn't know that he wrote Umbrella by Rihanna. I learned about The Dream's life, his relationship with his late mother, and how all of that led to him making this, honestly, in my opinion, classic R&B album. The writer, Megan Garvey, did such a great job of just telling this story about this album that means a lot to me. That is why music reviewing and music journalism is really valuable. Because when someone really takes their time and writes something great about a great project, or honestly, like, there are funny reviews about bad projects too, you know, like, you can go both ways, right? But it's in the beauty of the writing. So if you're not engaging with the writing, you're not going to get anything valuable out of looking at music reviews. And the truth is, you don't have to pay attention to music reviews. Nobody does, right? I can't even really fully blame fans for being critical of the state of music criticism in 2023. Plenty of outlets operate solely out of clickbait or impression farming. Listening to an album once and assigning it a numerical score is silly, inane even. But that's not stopping people on the internet from doing it. Complain all you want about Pitchfork or Fantano, I don't get the vibe that they're doing that. They definitely, in general, do their research and give projects multiple listens. Do they get things wrong sometimes? For sure. But I think their batting average is a lot higher than most of the other critics. That's why they have people paying attention to them. And if we're going to talk about impression farming, the irony is a lot of the people on Twitter who are arguing about Fantano's scores have little blue checks, which means that they could be monetizing their tweets and their content. So everything is for engagement, even the discourse now, not just the reviews. So you have to be careful when you engage with stuff because you never know who's just trying to make money off being a nonce on the internet. I mean, someone with a mic talking into a camera on YouTube, I don't know how much better I am than that, but at least I'm not monetized yet. Like, if you see me later in my career and like I like went all Hollywood, like, you look back at this moment and just shake your head, you know? Right now I'm just doing this for the sport. But yeah, that's the unfortunate state of music discourse in most places on the internet these days. Pretty much just people looking at a review and going 8 bad or 8 good. It's very rarely, you know, I disagree with what you said here, or even I agree with this point you made about this. I get it though. As a fan of artists and as an artist myself, I get why both groups get mad at reviews. Fans want to feel validation for their taste. And when someone they or others consider to be an important source on music says the opposite of whatever they think, it can make them question themselves. And that makes people get really defensive. What I would say is like, be yourself. You don't have to like Sexy Red. You don't have to like Fiona Apple. You don't have to like Drake. Yeah, why those are the 3 artists I named. But it's like, you don't have to be a fan of these artists just because people like them or dislike them or whatever. And on the artist side, of course it hurts when someone says your art isn't good. Even for me as someone who isn't famous, when I see people who I don't know talking about my music on the internet, I get a little like, ugh. Even when people say positive things, if the comparison isn't what I like, I might feel a little weird about it, even if I don't say anything. Honestly, I think artist comparisons and like why artists feel weird about them is worth its own video, but so I'll save that from here. So while I get it, I think the underlying point here is like what you like. And if you want to engage in criticism, it's totally valid. But you should actually read or watch the piece if you want to do that. You might disagree with the score, but agree with almost everything a reviewer says. So what are we even really getting mad about? As fans, what we should be criticizing is lazy reviewing, especially with inaccurate information in it. And if people are jumping to conclusions too quickly with music. As a fan too, I also think it's totally fair to say you don't care about reviews. Probably one of the most like secure things you can do if you're really like secure in your music taste. Just be like, bro, I don't care, right? If you want to read the piece for good journalism's sake, then that's cool, right? But like, it's totally fine to be like, I don't care. But the issue is that I would say like the vast majority of people on Twitter who are like, I don't care about reviews are also like, Fantano gave Sexy Red an 8, and you kind of have to choose one, right? Like pick one of those 2 reactions. And thankfully from my like very amateur analysis, it seems that a bad review doesn't always hurt your career if your music is good. And at the same time, a good review doesn't guarantee anything. Look at Lil Pump, right? At the end of the day, it's just more stuff for us to argue about on the internet. And we sure needed a lot more of that.